Yeah.
Um, so something I can tell about you already is that you seem like you went from where you were to having a joy-filled life now. So can you kind of give us the secret to having such a joy-filled life?
Yeah. I feel like there's three different components for me that are really the emphasis on that. And it's the three G's. And so for me, the first one is God.
Mhm.
And yesterday in the service, I'm like, oh my goodness, it was so poignant. They were talking about, having, if you are living in an anxious world, how it steals our peace. It'll take
Mhm.
our attention away from our purpose. And I'm like, oh my goodness, yes, and I'm like, I was so glad that we were going to talk today. Cause I'm like, this is right on. Cause it's like, it's faith or fear, you can't have both. And so I think that when I can focus on my relationship with God, that I can have a sense of calmness and peace in my journey. And, trying to, as I sit here trying to figure out my next step, I'm like, I get to just be, confident in taking action and being faithful in that. And everything else is going to fall into place. And when it feels like the more emphasis and worry I put on things, the harder it is to get to where I want to go. And when
Mhm.
I can release and just be like, you know what, God, I know you got it. All of a sudden, talking about going up the path, on those steps, right? All of a sudden, I was walking up those steps. And when I can release it and be like, okay, I know you've got it. Show me the way. What do you know? I'm taking that tram up.
Mhm.
It's a whole lot easier to
Yep.
do that. And so for me, I find so much of my joy and my strength in God. Yeah. Next one is gratitude.
Mhm.
For me is just being grateful. I mean, even in things as I've shared the story, it's like I could choose to be, upset and vengeful and, angry or feeling like, oh, woe is me for something, even minor things, right? That can happen throughout the day. And instead I'm like, you know what? No, I'm thankful this happened. I know there's a blessing in it, so tracking it, in from like journaling or just thinking about it in the moment and flipping the script and how I'm thinking about it, because our subconscious is so powerful. So it's like, no, I'm going to be thankful for everything. For me too, gratitude with even the finances, because there are times, I mean, I could have three boys in college, in another year. Okay, so talk about finances, right? I'm like, I could get a little worried about that.
Yeah.
And when I track, there have been times where I'm like, I will track every dollar that comes in. If I have a goal set and it's like, oh my goodness, how in the world am I ever going to get there? And then all of a sudden, as I'm tracking, I'm like, wow, God is so good and keeps showing up and abundantly. So it keeps
Mhm.
me in that abundance mindset. So with
Mhm.
gratitude, it keeps me in abundance mindset. And then giving. For
No.
me, it's giving and it can be just giving of compliments. Like as I drive through and I see someone and they're just so personable or they've got a great smile. So often in the past, I would have thought, nice smile and leave it at that. And instead I'm like, you know what? Thank you for showing up with that smile. I'm like, you just made my day. And you see that smile go even bigger, right? I mean,
Mhm.
help us fill each other's cups, with it can be compliments, it can be time, it can be money, whether it's your mentoring or anything, just giving. Because for me, when I give, it's creating those open hands, right? As opposed to clenching onto the dollars,
Yep.
which, there's times I get to remind myself to unclench, right? When I have those open hands, the entrepreneur journey is so much better. It's so much more fruitful, so much
Mhm.
more enjoyable, and it's so much more joyful.
Yeah. So much of that resonates with me. You and I are very like-minded in all of that. I was just having a conversation with someone that's been on my podcast previously, and I was actually on her show, and we talked about this. And how am I able to have so much joy, right? Because you have God. If you don't have God, it's a struggle. It's a struggle because you don't have that. Like when you hit those valleys, you have nothing to lean on, right? Um,
Mhm.
but when you have God, you have so much. And I
Yeah.
love your analogy of instead of going up steps, you were able to get on that on the not the escalator though,
The
what
little tram.
the
Yeah.
tram. Yeah, yeah, because that
Yeah.
is what it feels like, and the journey. He kind of smooths the path for you, right? Um,
Absolutely.
even though there's still bumps in the road, but
Oh,
you, you,
100%.
you don't feel them. You don't feel them as if he was like if he wasn't there. You'd be in the hole. You'd be in the
Yeah.
hole instead of just a
Oh,
bump.
absolutely. There's a video that I've seen circle through social media several times, and it's this. I think it's a sheep that this guy pulls out of this little narrow ravine, like he
Mhm.
totally gets stuck, and he pulls them out. and he runs and they're like, and this is God pulling me out of this one thing. And then he just jumps right back in, right? Like you were down in the hole of, God will keep pulling you out, but you know what? It's easier when you follow along. And you mentioned that about like having him to lean on. That honestly, in the first couple of years after, the divorce, well, I was in court for 10 years through the divorce process. So it wasn't just a quick little check off the box. Now we get to move on. It was a lot of emotional turmoil in that time. And that was one thing that I'd said that I remember. I'm like, I get to figure out how to continue to have that great relationship where I leaned on him, because in those first couple of years, there was absolutely no way I was doing anything on my own. And I clung to him in a way that is still, any other time in my life has not been as impactful as it was then. Right. So I'm like, okay, I get to figure out and just make sure that I find that relationship and have it every day. Cause we don't have to wait for that time when we feel like we can't do it all on our own to have it. But that's what it took for me to get down there. Is like, okay, you've got it. And I see his handiwork through all of it, all to this day.
Yeah. He has had such a hand on mine and my wife's life. It's just so miraculous in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
So awesome. The other thing you said in there about giving, I have an experience in my journey where I was tight-fisted with the money, right? And even when it comes to tithing, right? But you got to realize it's not yours. It's not yours. You give it back out. You give, and you will be surprised at how much comes back to you, because it's the whole thought of how you're thinking about the money. Is your faith in that, right? So yeah.
And I think it's something that if people haven't tried it, just try it and see what happens. I mean, I have conversations of that with my boys too. My youngest, particularly. I mean, he wants well, when he was 16, he thought I could get him a McLaren PS for a car, as a 16th birthday. I'm like, so, he likes the stuff. And hey, I always tell him, like, that's awesome. Enjoy your stuff, work hard for it and reward yourself for it. And here's the cool thing. When you give so much, more is going to come back. You wanted a McLaren PS? Hey, maybe when you're 21, you'll have two of them instead, because you're giving. He's like, I don't understand this giving.
Yeah.
I'm like, we'll continue to have conversations, and just try it. Cause it is, it has never, that's, I'm going to do double negative, never not worked. Right. When we are giving and we are gracious with our time, with our energy, with the money, resources, and everything, there's just so many more opportunities that present itself. It's like, it's just our faith. Hey, you're going to give. Let me show you let me show you what I can do, says God.
Yeah. I think one of the secrets to that too is, don't wait till you have it to give. You have to give it when you feel like you don't have it.
Yes.
Because that's really where the faith lies.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I know.
Yeah. Awesome.